Say, welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. Today I have a really interesting guest with me. Now, would you like to tell people who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Justin Aguirre, and I am a director of photography in Burbank, California.
Nice. And how did you get into working, or how did you find this profession? What was it that kind of brought you down this path?
I would say originally, would you believe, way back when I was a kid, I kind of wanted to be an actor.
Nice.
My family kind of indulged me a little bit and took me to those like open casting calls, and I quickly realized, no, this is definitely not for me. But my dad was still very encouraging, so he let me borrow it was a Sony Hi8 camera, the kind of like a black and white viewfinder, little chunky little video cameras from back in the day, and started making little movies around the house, and it kind of stayed with me for a couple years. Then I graduated. I got his old film Olympus camera. So I started taking photos, took that everywhere with me, and it kind of waned a little bit until high school when my high school, I was very fortunate, offered what they call an ROP class, a Regional Occupations Program class, and one of them was television. So our neighboring school actually had a TV studio that they'd broadcast like a school news throughout the school with.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I honestly never even knew the program existed until they put the paperwork in front of me and like, oh hey, you can do this if you're really interested. I'm like, oh that's really cool. So every like Tuesday and Thursday after school, we would go over there, me and a couple of my friends, for like 3 hours, and we would learn cameras and editing, and then we started our own high school news program for our high school. And I think by the time it ended, I was like the director of the program, or the director of like the news, whatever you want to call it.
That's awesome.
Then graduated, went to a community college in Costa Mesa called Orange Coast College.
Okay.
Still didn't really know where I was going to fall. Just I kind of knew, like, I love playing with cameras. I loved like making stuff. So I was like, okay, this is kind of a thing I can maybe explore. But it wasn't until after the first, I guess, introductory class, like, okay, no, I don't want to be a director. I want to be a director of photography, because I had more fun playing with the gear than I did dealing with the actors. Like, okay, someone else can deal with like the emotion and talking to people about, do this, do that. I like making it look cool. So that's kind of how I initially kind of fell into it. It was like a long time coming sort of thing.
Nice. Would you consider yourself a bit of a gearhead, or are you really like into gear, or is it more of the art that you like? What part of it is kind of, or is it all together?
I'd say it's a little all together. I'd say initially it was more on the gear, just playing with new things, like tinkering and breaking things down. I think that's kind of the original love kind of came from. But since then, it's kind of morphed into more of the art. Mm-hmm. I think for the last like couple of years, I've really dived heavily more into like film theory and more of like the reasoning why. Because since I did go to a community school, it was very lacking in those departments. So we never took like let me take that back. We had like a film history class and a director's history class, but very almost surface level, because it was a community college. So it was more of like, oh hey, we know these kids are going to just want to watch movies, so here's like the basics and this, that. So I've kind of like taken it upon myself to really kind of dive deep into like watching film theory YouTube channels, or I got a library card just because since I am in Burbank, the libraries here are very film heavy because we're next to all the studios. So I've just been renting all the Criterion films.
That's awesome.
That they've got on Blu-ray. And it's awesome. A good selection, actually.
Yeah. I love the Criterion films, man. It's just such a solid collection of films. And so that was one of the things that I loved being when I was back in LA. You touched on something that I really love. The library systems in Burbank and LA and all over are just really rich with movies. There's a ton of stuff there, man. And I've been living in Vietnam, where one of the things that I miss is we don't have much of a library here. And you forget how really awesome, like, people take that for granted in a major way, that you have these resources that are just so accessible. Now, if you had to pick some of those criterions, are there any that really impress you or that really touch you, and inspire you?
I'll say we just finished The Cremator, which was a 1968 Czechoslovakian film
Nice.
And we kind of picked it just because Halloween's kind of coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Black and white, about a man who's obsessed with death and believes that cremation is the true like liberation for the human soul. Like, oh, living is suffering, like cremation is freedom. So he kind of goes kind of crazy a little bit, and it's set in 1938 in Czechoslovakia. So like, you know, there's like rise of Nazism, and he gets involved with the Nazi party, and they kind of brainwash him into like, oh, you know, your family is kind of Jewish, so you know you should kind of take care of that. And he kind of goes kind of crazy and follows the orders. But it's shot in a very bizarre and creative way. Like every transition is a hidden cut. Like you
Really?
think you're in one scene, and the camera will pull out, and oh, you're back in another scene. They used some extreme wide, almost like a fisheye, for a lot of like the more like intimate shots. And the main actor, oh, he is a creepy dude. He's got the perfect lead for
I
that.
gotta look this up, man. This is a movie I have to look up when we're done.
It's not scary by any means, but like for just a psychological element, it's kind of terrifying. Like how you can just be kind of brainwashed into believing. Like he'll be with a character, have a speech, and the character will be like, oh yeah, we're talking about this, and then the next scene he'll literally just regurgitate the same information almost verbatim to other people, like as if it was his own.
Did you ever see there was this one crazy video on YouTube that was talking about how it had essentially showed all of these news programs across the US, and like they were reading all of the same thing, and like everyone had the same script, and it was like hundreds of different news channels, and it was just like, oh my gosh, because they're all owned by the same company, and the company was like giving them this script to work off of. And when you talk about that, it just reminds me of that, like that there's a script that is put out there, you know what I mean? It's really scary, that concept.
It definitely is. I saw that video a few times. I think even Conan O'Brien had it on a show, and at the very end, he's just like saying, like, "This is terrifying."
Yeah, right.
Like to his audience. Yeah, I think it was like the Newton Network, or it's like this very like benign name that's behind everything. Like you wouldn't ever think they're evil or anything like that, just because the name is so like friendly sounding.
Yeah, I had this. There was something that yesterday, I received a call. So I've been putting a lot of work into this podcast, and I love it. And one of the things that I like about it is that I am genuinely me, and I try to just ask people questions in a real natural way and find out stuff. And there's no puppeteer behind me. There's like no strings. I'm not answering anyone. It's just, you know, it's organic, you know. And I got a call from this TV station here. And they were like, we would like you to be a reporter on a financial network. And I was like, no way. Not that it's bad, but like, I don't know anything about finances. I don't know anything. And I mean, I'm just going to be reading a script. Like, what I like about this is I can just say my own thing. And I can kind of go in the direction I want to go, where if I'm working off of a script for a financial news station. And I mean, it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't a big one like back in the West. It was something locally here in Southeast Asia, which would be cool, but I wanted just to kind of do my own thing. And I think that can kind of be special at times, you know?
Yeah, I really respect that.
Yeah, but I like this, the Cremator. And there's so many of my favorite criterions are like from the, I love a lot of the, like, you know, of course, Seven Samurai and some Rashomon. But I love all of the Kurosawa works that are all Criterion pictures. They're just amazing films. And did you ever see, there was this one video on, because again, getting into cinematography, cinematography is really this dance of a camera. You know, people don't understand, and I didn't understand, even though I came from a filmmaking background, how much movement could be used to tell a story. There's this one great video, and I'll send it to you when we're done if you haven't seen it. And it was on Kurosawa, and how Kurosawa moved movement in the shot and movement with the camera, then combine them to create these insane, like the way he painted, like, and so if Kurosawa had someone walking this way, right, then he would have rain or something coming from this way. And there was just always these crossing movements that was really special. And then his camera movements were insane. And so it was really cool. But I'll send that to you. But
Yeah, please, because the little details like that are like just fascinating to me. Because it's one of those, like, unless you're really into like film theory and like really analyze the frame like on a big screen, I feel like a lot of that could be kind of lost.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
And I mean, and I think that, you know, one of the things that's special about going back to these old films is that the style of filmmaking has changed so dramatically. The way we shoot now from the way they shoot it in the past, it's very different. Now, go ahead.
Definitely agree to that. The ADD, the short attention span, the more quick cuts, and the TikTok and the YouTube generation definitely changed on viewing habits and how we like even digest media.
Yeah. One of the things too, like that you pointed, what is your style? Because I've seen some of your work; it's really enjoyable. But how would you describe your style?
Oh, well, thank you first of all. I'm still. I think for a lot of people, I think, including myself, style is always evolving. So I kind of never want to like say it out loud and kind of like pigeonhole it. But I generally enjoy, the shooting on the darker side. I've been involved with a lot of like thriller and horror films, kind of because I just fell into it. I'm not really a big like horror junkie, to be honest, but just the lighting style I feel very fascinating and a lot more freedom and creativity than say like a big broad comedy. Mm-hmm. And I've done those too. Just I think for me the broader comedies are a little harder to light. Because it's just like, okay, shadow ratio and all that, but for horror or anything else like that, it's like, oh, hey, we can drop like a 5K or like a big HMI like right through this window, and that's it. We can like very backlit, very moody, half the face is going in the shadow. That's just kind of fun for me. So it's definitely more on the darker side and definitely more on the moodier side. I've been experimenting a lot more of color lately with the advent of RGB LED technology.
Nice.
And I've been having a lot of fun with that because before it's like, oh, maybe I can put a gel on here, but now it's like, oh, you know what? Let me just spin the wheel. Let me just see what blue looks like, or with this weird like puke green kind of looks like on a face or a wall, and it's been kind of freeing a little bit just to know that anything you can come up with now is you can have by like a turn of a dial.
Right. So cool.
Yeah. That's kind of maybe in a nutshell. And it's always evolving, especially whatever I usually watch, like going back to the Cremator, like I've been kind of obsessed lately with like ultra wide lenses because for the longest time I associated ultra wide or anything wide really to be more on the amateur side, like because back in the day, like the sensor technology where wide meant deep depth of field, and that's kind of what the indies and the amateurs and the YouTube people did. Like, I'm not saying like YouTube influence. I'm talking like first generation YouTube. But with like the newer cinema lenses that come out like ultra wide, and like you can get shallow depth of field, like having these weird like compositions in wide has been really fascinating to me. So like I've been kind of gravitating towards that a little bit more, and that's just kind of like the evolution of where I'm kind of going. I love weird stuff.
No, that's interesting.
Weird cameras and all that.
Because like you don't think about that all the time. Like with the because you're right. One of the things that I notice when I shoot things too, wide is super challenging too, because with a tight camera you don't have to worry. But one of the places that I go back in film history and you look at like some of the musicals, everything was wide, and like because they had these big sets, these grand sets, and you look at some of the I was rewatching. I did the AFI's top 100 films, and and I was watching some of those, and Lawrence of Arabia, man, it's so much going on. Don't worry, I can bring down the exposure.
It's gonna go away. It's in the corner of my apartment, so it's gonna go like right through a pillar in like about a minute or two.
I totally understand. I have this light behind me, and we were shooting And I had my friend Andrew on, and Andrew is a DOP that's been on a ton of stuff. And I met him when I worked on the movie Angels and Demons in Los Angeles. And
Oh, wow.
it was really cool. And so when
Yeah.
he was on, he was talking to me about that. He's like, he was making examples of stuff. And he's like, you see that light behind you? It's blown out. I would just do this. And I was just like, calling me out in the middle of my podcast. And I had to put a pop-up, but I was like, I will fix that.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky though, man. Like, because, I'm so used to being in front of the camera that, when you jump behind, it's just, there's so much, or being behind the camera, you jump in front, it's different, But what are some of the challenges? Because let's dive into that. This is something that comes up in everyone's podcast, that you can plan perfectly, but there is always something. You know what I mean? How do you handle when things, challenges on set? How do you approach that?
Ooh, I think it depends on the challenge. Let's see. We'll go to a recent example.
Perfect.
Recently, I was shooting a horror short film.
Nice.
And we had it planned out where our big climax was a pumpkin that was going to spew blood out of its mouth. They had the blood attached
awesome.
to it. Yeah. It turned out pretty cool, but there was this moment we were shooting outside and it's daytime, it's evening, and over my shoulder I can just see the sky start turning, the purples and the reds, and I'm like, crap. In my head I'm like, crap. And twilight happened. I'm like, okay, we have literally 20 minutes to get this shot,
man.
And it's stressful. And like, some people, they start saying, oh, we can do this, and this, and it's just like, it adds to the stress. Like, let me just think for a second. And it went from like building not scarecrow, but building like the pumpkin was supposed to be on someone's head.
Right.
And the pumpkin was like eating the person's face, and that's why the blood comes out. So instead of like building a dummy and all that.
Side note, that's awesome.
It was definitely like, I read the script and like, this is new. This could be a new shot. It went from like building this dummy, like like a whole apparatus, to okay, we got to prop the pumpkin up now, shoot it at like almost a profile with just a little bit of the of the mouth open, just because we didn't have time to rig out the interior properly.
Yeah.
Extreme tight instead of going to the wide.
Mm-hmm.
And just because of the blocking, it worked out. Like, okay, actor, stand right here so we don't see the background, and then just blasted light. And it works because it's such a quick shot. If you sit there, for me, I see I'm like, okay, the light's actually in the wrong spot, but like it was. You kind of have to like just go with the flow. Yes. I think for the most problems on set, because you never know what's going to happen, and you never know what the solution is going to be until it's there. Because it's one of those things like you're experienced and you know your stuff. The crew knows their stuff, the director knows their stuff, actors know their stuff. But when it comes down to it, no one's ever done the film you're making until you actually make it. So those problems are unique to those films.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, weird things. You can be in a place like, oh, this is beautiful, and then 5 o'clock happens. Like, oh wait, where's that crack coming from? Oh, it's a skylight that we never, bothered to note. That's way down the vicinity. It's like, okay, crap. Now we got to go plug that up, or neighbors with like what you like how you said, like there's a pool party, like, oh, there's people doing construction, or there's people blocking a street. Yep. We did another film where we ended up actually going to a different location, but it brought down the entire morale of the set for about an hour. The location locked us out of an office.
Oh man!
We rented an entire floor of an office building, but like the hero's main office within that floor was locked.
Oh,
and they couldn't get the key, and the location, because we're on the phone, like, can we just break the lock? We'll buy you a new lock. I'm like, no, you can't, because it's all electronic, and you can't just do that. And so you're like, okay, what do we do? And we have to shoot around it, like get creative with the angles. I have to go, but the shoot, we're going into the office, like walking down the corridor. Like, okay, we can stuff in the foreground in the way to kind of block the actors, and then we'll have to like just note this for when we go back and shoot it again. So it's definitely always thinking on your toes. I think that's the big thing. And you got to be quick, and you got to be calm, especially as a department head. Your demeanor, your body language can spread really fast to the crew, especially the actors, really fast. Like if they see the DP like stressing, like it's not looking good, it can get in their heads like, oh man, it's not looking good. Like I don't look good. My performance is not going to look good.
As an actor, I'll attest to that. Like, I remember being on some big sets and people started fighting. Like, I saw a department head fighting with someone. Like, not like, fist fights, but they were just really pissed off and stressed out. And I was like, looking around, I was like, shit, man, this is taking me out of my A game. And then you have to go and be like, have a romantic scene or do this or that. And, most of the sets, they'll keep you off. The actors are kind of in their space, in their trailer until it's time to come to set. But at the same time, you come on the set and you can sense it, unless you're absolutely oblivious, you can sense if something's really stressful. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, that's true. Like there was, not really diving into this too much because I am non-union, but with all the contract negotiations that's been going on lately in this town, there's been this like on social media there was this kind of like push or this like revelation like, oh, the actors are very sheltered, they don't know the hardships of all the crew, and it's by design, like because if the actors know like all the little details that are going wrong behind the scenes, it is going to affect them. And the movie, unfortunately, it rides and dies on their performance. Yeah. If like the big A-lister, just can't get it together, it's not going to generate the money to make more films. I'm being very, very surface level, very basic on that, but like, that's initially why I think all that kind of stuff evolved the way it did. Yeah. You keep tech issues like, oh, we buzz and focus, away from that because they don't want to waste like, oh, the entire performance of the actor was just wasted. Yeah. Then they can get them pissed or they can get them like out of it. So we're going to go one more for safety. Yeah, it's cool. But like, oh man, that was out of focus, or oh man, battery was blinking halfway down, or something like that.
Yeah, no, totally. And that stuff happens, man. And it's just like, and I think you have to adapt, like you said. Now, what do you like to shoot on? Do you have a preferred camera, preferred gear, preferred lenses?
So, I am a Red owner. I have an older Red, but it's by no means, I'm no like a Red fanboy or anything like that. It's really, it's a like a not like a sexy answer. It's like whatever is the best for the story.
100%. 100%.
I mean, I've shot on everything from the Alexa, the Red, the Sonys, the Canons, to weird stuff. Like I grew up shooting like Super 8 films. I love the format dearly. I procured a fully functioning VHS camera.
That's
and like
awesome.
the big gigantic ones.
Yeah.
Sitting over there, I'm like just sitting out. I look at it, I'm like, I want to shoot something with that, like
that's
a
awesome.
music video or something experimental. So that's kind of like the.
Well, can I tap on that? There's something like they have these emulations and these presets that are supposed to emulate it. It doesn't though. Like I was using like a tape grain, filter or not filter plugin, type of a thing, and I was just a preset. Plugins are for music. Preset, and I was like playing it, and I was like, this just doesn't look. It's not the same. And it's like when I have photographer friends that love to do like throw a Portra preset on there, and it's okay. It's impressed by the color, but when I shoot, I'm a film person. I love shooting on film. I've got a ton of film cameras, and when I shoot on Portra, I'm sorry, I don't care how good you are, it's not the same. You know what I mean? And so if like to shoot something on VHS, that would be awesome, man. I would really be interested, but like, it could be really cool to see what that would turn out and look like. But that sounds fascinating to me. Would you do separate audio, or would you try to capture audio on the machine as well? That's a question.
It's probably separate audio. Like I just have a sound person
That's still
kind
so
of roll
cool.
with that. But I know, like it's interesting because you can have the picture kind of look like whatever you want. I mean, it can be like VHS, it can be like 8K, amazing. But the audio is not good, or it's like scratchy. The audience will instantly turn that off.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it's cool that people are kind of making this evolution back to some stuff, and to look to these old things, because like the Super 8, man, it was such a cool format. It's awesome like that. Now,
yeah, it's definitely like retro is definitely chic. It's definitely in right now.
Yeah.
I'm all about it. I'm definitely guilty about that.
I'm part of the club, man. So you're preaching to the choir. Now, what are some of the projects that you've been working on lately? What are some of the things that you've been putting some time into?
Ooh, that's also a big question. Right now, I think some of the information I sent over. There's a feature film actually that's going to be premiering next month.
Yeah.
In Buffalo that we shot in during quarantine. That's actually probably the in terms of like the latest that's coming out. That's going to be it right there.
Nice.
That was shot over I think 12 days, and one location, there's a 2-person cast with like a supporting crew. Is me, a gaffer, we had audio, and like we had a PA and makeup department, which was like one person, and then an assistant for like a heavy day. But we just rigged out the entire house on a pre-light pretty much, and we were just able to like kind of rock and roll. We knew our zones. Like, okay, we're gonna go here, here, and here, and we know our lighting for this and this. So, we do soft wraps every day, and we were able to knock out something that looks a lot higher budget than what it actually was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it got picked up. And again, it's like in a horror genre, so it got like picked up by Pop Horror as the premiere, and the trailer's now out. So that's the big one. Some other ones, I guess, a future coming up. There's a few features in the works right now. They're all kind of waiting to land. I think dates are starting to being asked around on like text messaging, like, "Hey, you free these days, or does this work?" Most of them are also in the thriller, like kind of horror genre a little bit.
Nice.
And it's again, like, not something I ever thought I'd see myself really diving deep into, but the industry takes you kind of where it wants to take you, kind of
right.
deal.
But it's like you can, like you said, you got to let go of control sometime and just go with the flow,
Mm-hmm.
But that's really awesome. Now, what are some of your goals for the long term? What would you really love to do?
Okay. Shorter term goals is hopefully join Local 600 as a director of photography. I'm getting my days currently right now. And in terms of like projects and like ideally what I'd love to shoot, I always would love to shoot like a 1940s police drama, like a 1940s film noir kind of drama, like
man.
Set in LA, because I love history. I love, and since I actually grew up in Los Angeles, so like seeing the city like change over the last like 30 years has been fascinating, and we've lost so much history. So kind of go back in time a little bit, to kind of to recreate it. Like I know when they're shooting Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like I was on Hollywood Boulevard when they were shooting all that, and just to see 1960s Hollywood back on all the storefronts, all the cars and the people, it blew my mind.
Like that shot of what was it? What freeway did they shut down? Down near LAX. That one freeway.
I think it's the 105.
105. And so they shut that down, and they had all these giant lights that Tarantino had set up, and all these classic cars on that freeway. I was watching like some shots of how they did that, and it was just so fascinating, man. It was awesome. It was so fascinating.
Yeah. Really fun. Like when you have the budget, like anything's possible.
Right. But what was the other movie? There was a really great LA film noir with Ryan Gosling. Oh man.
Gangster Squad.
Gangster Squad. Oh man, that was really good.
Yeah, that was actually very well done.
Mickey Cohen and was Sean Penn.
Yeah. Yeah, and Emma Stone, I think, was in that as well.
Emma Stone as well. But I think Josh Brolin was in there as well. Was he? I don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a, but what I love about those film noir is that it's just like the lighting is awesome. It's just really, really dynamic lighting as well. But also, it's just we don't see them that much anymore. They're they're not done so much, you know.
No, I think the old school way of lighting things is almost like a lost art form now. And also just because we don't use really the same gear. I mean,
Mm.
the carbon arcs and the big tungstens are still the tungsten still goes. Carbon arcs don't really exist anymore.
Hmm.
But everyone, especially the newer generation or the modern generation of filmmaking, is big softer sources and all that.
Yeah.
You kind of look everything's kind of softer, prettier,
Yep.
more refined. But if you look at even like I Love Lucy is
Casablanca.
all
Yeah, it's
yeah yeah it's all shadows.
yeah,
You know.
super high contrast. You know, the chiaroscuro. Contrast between
Mhm.
high lights and darks. Which, yeah, man, it's really different. And that's kind of what I was poking at too. Is like there is just so much our modern filmmaking style. The lighting is so really different. And it's really interesting because there is this. I did you watch? There's a new film that just came out, and I've been going back and forth with the DOP on that. It was on Netflix, but he shot it so beautifully. It was Night Teeth or Night Tooth. It's this new
Oh,
vampire,
I think I've seen that one.
and what I really noticed played out in that is the new neons. You see, like my wife bought a couple of these things, like not these, but like those LED tubes that you plug them in, and it's just like this it really like crazy neon, but it's not like the '80s neon that was like like kind of like a glowing green, but it's just like these, and you see these all over YouTube. But it's interesting to see how some of those color palettes are entering their way into larger cinema as well. And so it's just kind of cool like that. Now, what are some you had said that was kind of one thing that was like a closer term, but do you have any other long-term goals?
Be very lofty,
Go lofty,
being
man.
invited to join. Yeah, being invited to like join the ASC, that would be a big honor, because that's not anyone but your fellow peers. Be like, hey, your work is speaks, and you're worthy, and you can join this fraternity of other cinematographers. That'd be ultimately the big goal, and I would say that's probably a little bit higher than like any type of like award, Oscar, or anything like that kind of recognition. Just because, like big award shows like that, it's a panel.
Yeah.
ASC is kind of like just really your peers. There's a lot of politicalness with like the Oscars. Like Life of Pi. Remember that was a big thing. Like one cinematography. It's like 90% CGI. It's great. It looks great. Also, no disrespect to the DP, but a lot of that is visual effects to make it look that certain way, and the politics play into that. So like having something like the ASC kind of saying, hey, come join us, we're all about cinematography here. I think that'd be like one of the highest honors that could happen to me. That's probably the biggest like long-term lofty goal that I have. So everything I'm trying to do is kind of working up, not like working up to that, but like preparing myself that if the day ever came knocking on the door, I'm able to answer it, with confidence, kind of a deal.
I'm sure it will, man. Just got to keep putting it out there, brother. Now, when you approach, let's start. You get a script in front of you. Script is set down on your table. How do you start, or do you even get a script? Is that how a movie comes to you? How do you start preparing for short, feature, commercial, to anything? How do you start preparing for a project?
Usually it's with a script. Very rarely it's like, hey, we're going to throw you to the wolf. But it's the script first, and then I'll usually take a day or so. I'll read the script, maybe a couple times. First, I really just try to read it for the story first off. But since I know me, I know my head, like I'll read and be like, oh, this would be kind of, like, instantly, oh, this would be cool if it was like this, or this would be cool if there was like over here castating onto their face when this portion. But generally, that's how I try to approach it. Like story first. And then see what kind of evolves in my head from that. Second time around, I'll maybe make notes, or I'll maybe make little doodles or something like that in the script pages. Or I'll think, oh, this reminds me of this, or this reminds me of that. That's usually followed with a phone call with like the director, or like a meetup or coffee with the director, and just talking about, hey, so I read this, and before usually I speak my mind, I always try to go with, okay, what was like what was your original thought with this? Like I
Mm,
want to see what their vision is. Because one, it's ultimately it's collaboration, but I'm serving the story, I'm serving like the director, so I want to see what they're kind of coming from first. And second, if I say something too off the wall, maybe I don't get the job. So I
yeah.
kind of keep those like extreme ones like in the back of my head until I see them, and it'd be crazy, you throw it in there as a little sly. Um, but at that point, it's kind of like you kind of dive deep and go back to the library question. Maybe rent some stuff, stream some stuff, kind of get
Yeah.
my head around it. There's a wonderful website now called Shot Deck, which I joined. That all it is just film references, like stills. So you can type
That's
in
awesome.
like, oh, this is going to be a horror set at dusk in farmland. So you can type in like horror dusk exterior, maybe two people, and it'll like within the database will pull up every reference, every still reference that kind of collaborates out. You can make little like lookbooks and export the images out.
That's
Um,
really awesome because
yeah,
there's
it's new too. It's fairly new, and it's just been like in the circle. It floated around Instagram for a hot second, and
yeah,
then like a lot of my friends and colleagues, they started picking it up, and I picked it up, and it's been great for building lookbooks for directors.
it's
I've
really
used it
awesome.
so far on like a feature, a bunch of shorts, and a couple of music videos. Just kind of like hey, this is what it could look like, and then I'll pull together like maybe 100 or plus images, export that out, send it to the director, and be like, hey, these are the things I was thinking of, and they'll go through and be like, okay, yes, no, and then from there we kind of refine.
That's really awesome.
Because one thing I've realized is not all directors are visual. Some are more tech, and some are performance.
That's a good point.
So like they might like something, like, hey, I really like this, but they can't really like vocalize exactly what they like about it. So
Mm,
if I throw them like 50 images and then they start cherry picking, I'm like, okay, so you kind of like, a medium shot, you kind of like lower angles, you kind of like this aspect ratio, and they might not know it offhand, but seeing it on a board, kind of like, got it, I can see what they want, kind of a deal.
that's a good point
So
because some directors might come at it from an acting background, or from a character background, or from just this kind of a story background, versus being as technical when it comes to types of cameras and shots and angles. I don't know if that makes sense, but like that makes you look at someone who came up like Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh
mhm.
is an actor's actor. Like the man is like an absolute genius when it comes to acting. But and I'm sure he knows everything about everything. But a person who comes up from that side might not be as adept in understanding, the aspect ratios and different lenses and things like that. Versus some directors are extremely adept with the gear and such. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, and then as a DP, you have to be flexible to kind of navigate all those personalities.
Right?
Um, we did another film where the director had an iPad of just stuff he liked, paintings, pictures, movies. So we'd be on set, and he'd be like flipping through the iPad, like, I want it to look like this, and I look at him like, got it, and I just run off and kind of build that world, and it's definitely an interesting approach. A lot of pluses to it because I can visually see, okay, I know what he wants. Other times you see one photo and it's like, ooh, how do I do that? Is that really what he wants? Like, there's a lot of little variables, but it's definitely been a big help. And I think, websites like the Shot Deck, or, having iPads on set, you can easily pull up references, can be very beneficial, especially since production is going so fast these days.
One of the things, like, too, that I always I felt when I was putting stuff together, and I needed to have, storyboards for stuff. And I can't draw for shit, and I would be trying to sketch things, and just try to, putting stuff together so I could have a better person sketch it. And I love the fact that Canva now has a storyboard template. And then, I go and find stock footage if they have a ton of stock footage, and or I go reference, but I didn't know about this website you were talking about where I could grab that and put it into a template, because again, technology just is making it so much easier to put together the visuals, examples, and then it takes some of the guesswork out of it so that you can go, this is what we're trying to create, and then you go make it, which is really awesome.
Definitely the technology's been a big leveler, I would say, because I think, like it or not, like, mobile technology is here and it's only improving. I think the new iPhone shoots ProRes,
right?
If you don't,
It's insane,
the 13 Pro shoots ProRes, and that's insane right there.
And
so
I remember when the iPhone came out, I was on Angels and Demons when the iPhone came out. So from when I started, my first big film to now, we've gone from this thing that was just really rudimentary. Like, let's be real, the original iPhone the apps were really basic and the camera was basic, to now ProRes, man. Where will it be in 10 more years,
I have no idea. I honestly think, like, the next step would probably be like that, the shallow depth of field in those cameras, like doing it digitally, like putting the algorithm around them, because they kind of do it already with the portrait mode on the iPhone.
Yep.
So they can bring that technology, refine it, and put it into video. It's definitely, I think it's definitely going to happen at some point. I don't think there's any way around it at this point. There's still some people and colleagues that kind of snub the iPhone, and it won't. I don't think it would really be my first choice, unless sort of really call for it. Like, oh, hey, this is going to be like a found footage, or this is a like an online kind of a thing, like an online story where it takes place in that virtual space. But I do know they're going to be contenders. I think they definitely took the place of, like, the video cameras of yesterday. Like,
for sure.
And approaching almost like the prosumer, hobbyists, because we were, you're going at major news events and there's people with iPhones on tripods with microphones, and that's how they're recording.
I've been seeing people, singers, making music videos with their iPhones, and it was just like, what? But they're doing it, and it looks great. These little acoustic videos, and it's like, you got it, man.
Yeah, exactly. I think, was it Sean Baker's Tangerine, the first iPhone feature? Like, that story perfectly suited the iPhone.
Yep.
And as long as the story suits the camera, I think it would be. I have no issue. I've actually shot 2 shorts on an iPhone, but there's very specific reasons why. They wanted to have, like, that gritty. They wanted the imperfectness of a smaller format, and just to get some of the angles that we are needing. Like, oh, hey, just put the phone here. Hey, take a piece of gaff tape, literally tape the phone up.
Right.
Is fascinating. But yeah, I think it all goes back to, if the camera is appropriate for the story, I think we're going to see a lot more films with mobile in the next, like, years. But I know that's already here, but, like, I think it's going to be more of an avalanche, a cascade effect of just, like,
when you look at
good,
like
quality content.
I think one of the areas that's been revolutionized in a huge way is, like, the idea of, like, how people approach cameras in the air. Before it was an airplane or a helicopter. Like, that's what it was. Anything that was in the air. And then they got these drones, or, a giant techno crane, that would crank the thing up to a high height, but it wasn't flying. It was like these amazing helicopter pilots that were doing it with someone that was controlling the camera. But then, now we're seeing these amazing UAVs or drones that you can put a camera on, and with the red Komodo being so small and compact, throwing a red Komodo on there, and then the crazy stuff with the FPVs, man. My dream, I really want to get Johnny FPV on here and interview him. Have you seen his stuff?
I think I have, actually. Like,
it's
crazy. It's crazy.
It's insane, man. Like, and like these they're throwing GoPros, at 4K on top of this insanely powerful little acrobatic UAV that's just flying. Like, there was one that he did at, I think it was Burj Khalifa, and just flying up the side of the building and back down and just spinning around it. I was just like, oh my God, man. It's insane. And that technology has just gone like this, man, just like straight up. The speed that became went from not a thing to something that is completely different is rocket fast, man. So
And it's very, very, very true. And like going back, like the camera technology in those things too, like starts out like, oh, it's just 1080. Oh no, now it's 4K. Oh hey, now we're gonna do like a log, or now we're gonna do a raw.
right.
If iPhone does ProRes, like the DJI Jones, that's gonna be a thing. I think it already is a thing. I think it might like one or two of them.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just crazy how fast it goes. It's like it's almost like coming from like an owner-op point of view. It's great because the price has been coming down. It's more like democratized, but at the same time, it's like you invest into any system, you gotta get your money back fast, or else it's just like dead in the water.
That's the thing.
You know what I mean?
Totally true. Like I bought the Blackmagic Pocket at Cinema 4K, and it was like great camera, and then all of a sudden 6K came out, and then the red Komodo came out, and it's just like all of these cameras are super affordable and accessible. And it was like, just for what we were for video blogging, but like I was like, I don't want to upgrade for this if I'm doing a video blog for my wife, you know what I mean? Because she's an influencer. It's like, again, it comes back to, well, what is your purpose? You know what I mean? And at that point in time, if you're running around, sometimes where those things are considered, again, it's like the iPhone is perfect for some of that, iPhone plus the Rode makes the little like video mic that goes on the iPhone now. It's insane, man. And so it's really special, like the level we're getting to. But again, I think you're seeing this circle back. My friend runs an acting school, and she started and she's also an acting manager in Europe, and she started this influencer line. Not influencer, a creative line. And the idea is teaching influencer creatives how to do storytelling. Because if you can't beat them, join them, you know what I mean? And it's like, some point.
Yeah, that's true. We've worked with a few of them, some of the big influencers, both like as talent and actually behind the scenes as crew. And there's some really wonderful people, and
totally,
they're very talented people. They're on the flip side of that, that's kind of nice knowing that those kind of schools are starting to be created, because what we've noticed, and this is not a dig on anyone, they're very good at that one thing that made them famous. But on the flip side, they're only good at that one thing that made them famous.
Yep.
So. Like you, like some of the YouTube or influencer filmmakers, great, very creative, but you get them on like a set with like, I don't want to say professional filmmakers, but with like the standards that have been in place, and the safety protocols have been in place.
Well, let me point this one out, like because I'll supplement what you're saying. Like my friend Andrew, who was the DOP on, or not, he wasn't. He was the first AC on Angels and Demons, and now he is a DOP on a lot of things for Second Unit. He was pointing out, like, when you're working with something that's going to be projected on a screen this size, it's very different than when you're working with something that's going to be projected on a big screen. And like you said, the safety's different, the things are different. That run and gun style, when you're on a major set, you got to be safe. You also have to consider the format where your video is going to be shown. It's different.
It's definitely different. But yeah, that's kind of the big things right there. Like it's just, I'm glad to hear that there are people that are wanting to teach more of the storytelling element and all that. I do think sometimes it's very trendy. Our industry, I think, has become more trendy as the years come by, especially with the advent of social media.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people getting into this, which is great. A lot of cool stories, and I've met a lot of people at film festivals and like just seeing their work online. But I think it's almost kind of a disservice. There's like this. They're promoting this. People promote this lifestyle like, oh, it's glamorous. We travel. We film gorgeous people. We play with the biggest toys, and it's like, bro, we're freelance. Like, there's so many people that don't make it, and it's not like that discouraged. It's like just be aware of this and be smart enough to like build your team and build your skill set so you actually can kind of make it out and survive. Anyone can make a movie. You can make a movie in Vietnam. You can make a movie in America. You can make a movie in a small town, big town. Doesn't matter where. I just think knowing what the expectations are and like your personal like career path and your personal goals kind of have to be in line with
Yeah.
what you're actually doing.
In making a movie is different from making a good movie, which is also different from making a successful movie. Not
Very true.
always are these, not that they're mutually exclusive, but they don't always, they're not always on the same path. Something can be successful and not be good. It can also be something can be good and not successful. You know what I mean? And so I think those are things that you have to consider too, because we all only have so many hours in our day. And at the end of the day, you have to be putting your energy into stuff that not saying everything needs to be like this legacy thing, but it is your legacy. It is what you're putting out there. You know what I mean?
Very, very, very true. I 100% agree with that. It's we're a very unique industry. We're a very unique lifestyle. It's very much of a lifestyle career, and I think legacy is, I think, a little bit in the back of everyone's mind, because once we sleep the final sleep, many years from now, we will have our works. We will have like a library of accomplishments that we've done, and we can actually just go on and show people. They'll live on. You maybe get a Criterion release one day. And we're all.
Have you seen the new Dune yet?
I did. I did see the new Dune. We saw it in a theater. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Visually beautiful. It's like if Terrence Malick and Star Wars had a baby together.
Right.
That's kind of what Dune is.
I was, and that's what I bring that up, because when I saw that, it reinvigorated me, because I was like, I want to be part of something like that, because those are the ones that, like, I've had movies that I was on that I'm just like, well, I'm so glad that, that is done. And it's like, not that it's bad, but it's not that thing that you're super, super proud of. But, something like that when I watched Dune, I was like, man, that one's going down as, cinematic, visually, one of the greatest movies of recent history. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm like thinking of all the things like we saw. Like, honestly, go back to that old saying, like, every frame a painting, and like you can definitely say it for, I would say, the overwhelming majority of that film.
Yeah.
The color, the lighting, the movement, the subtleness. Because there's some scenes that kind of go on, but it's almost like not like a Blade Runner 2049, but like almost like you're actually, like, the movie ends and you're in their world for real. So the camera kind of disappears. So you're kind of sitting there, and the scene's kind of going on, and it almost comes to the point where, like, it feels like you're experiencing it through first person eyes, like if the world is real.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is great which is great storytelling, great cinematography, and just really well done. Now, if you could go back in time and give some advice to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh. Take more chances and be more bold. I was the last of my friend circle to actually make the move from Orange County to Los Angeles, and it's about an hour and a half drive. It's not bad, but it's a different mentality, in LA when you're actually in the middle of everything. I kind of like wafted a little bit, like, after college, and I didn't really get focused until a couple years down the road. I don't necessarily regret it, because like some life events happened that I'm glad everything kind of transpired the way they did. But at the same time, I feel like I did hold myself back. So the biggest advice I would say is, like, just don't hold yourself back. Like, just go for it. Like, who cares? The things like, I'll never work in this town again is false. It's 100% false. Like, there'll always be another job. There'll always be another opportunity. You can't make one gig. There will be another one. So just, like, try going out for more. That's the biggest, like, that's the biggest piece of advice. That I would say to myself.
Awesome. Now, imagine you had Aladdin's lamp. What would you wish for in relation to your career?
Ooh, that's a very interesting question. I would say nothing gear related. Nothing gear related at all, actually. I would say more maybe social cues, maybe social graces, like just having the gift of gab a little bit better, maybe a little more charisma. Because I know, the whole, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know, like networking
Yeah.
aspect, like just being more like, oh, you're in a room full of 50 people, oh, these are like indie, these are like executive people, like you have the confidence, like to kind of walk up, like, hi, I'm Justin, this is who I am. So I'd be like, ooh, here's my hide in the corner of this little drink, you know. I honestly think that, because I think the networking and all that, which is always like I'm always working on, but like having networking, communication, leadership, all those kind of skill sets, like more hammered in, I think can get rewards later on for pretty much anything else you want in your career. You want gear, boom, you got it. You want bigger jobs, boom, you got it. Just because you were able to be that guy, you can be the person to, hey, let's work together. And I'm usually pretty good. Usually, like emails, I'm like okay, but like if I'm actually in a meeting with someone and it's like one-on-one on coffee or a lunch, I not patting myself in the back, I feel like I do pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can, we crack some jokes, be very casual, so I think that's hopefully what's going good for me. It's been working so far, so I'm gonna keep riding that train a little bit.
Hope so, man.